The other thing that happened yesterday, or maybe late the previous night, was Chris Paul and the Clippers agreeing to part ways. Chris Paul hasn't been waived. Clippers saying that they will work with him on his next steps. Obviously, messy, ugly divorce there for a player who thought he was on his farewell tour. And then the team just says, we want you to go home. There's been the Chris Paul Knicks thing for what seems like 15 years. I'm told that probably not happening, nothing there at this point in terms of the Knicks trading for Chris Paul. I think there is um, a desire or they're going to keep an eye on the point guard market, but Chris Paul is not considered an option at the moment. Your thoughts on just kind of where he could end up, but also the Knicks and their point guard situation behind Jalen Brunson?
Well, first, the thing that you said about 15 years, that's probably when you really wanted to get Chris Paul.
Yeah.
To think now at 40 years old that you're going to get him, and look, Ty Lue, I don't know him well personally, but every person I've ever spoken to in the league says he's a player's coach.
Yeah.
He's the sort of guy you want to be partnered with as a player. If he's not talking to Chris Paul, if those reports are true, and that they haven't spoken for weeks, to me that says sort of the poison that you don't want. You know, Chris has been a great leader. He's been an amazing player. He's a Hall of Famer whenever he steps away. But at this point in his career, what he can contribute on the court, I just I know people like leadership and stuff, but the Knicks have leaders. This is Jalen Brunson's team. I don't think they need Chris Paul coming in and an overwhelming presence as a guy who's a 10-minute a game player. It just doesn't make sense to me. If you could get me, also he's size wise he doesn't fit what the Knicks need. If you could get me a 6'5" defensive minded orchestrator as a backup point guard, all for it. But I don't want to put him in any comparison to Chris Paul. But Tyler Kolek's been better this year. He's defensively, I think he's gotten a little stronger. He's gotten a
Mhm.
little bit more skilled. Um, he does orchestrate the offense well, and has some of those qualities that you want with a 10-minute a night guy. Um, I don't know that he's the answer, but if you could uh, ideally get what I said, like somebody with some size, somebody who can do those things, that'd be great. But doing it for a 6 foot 40-year-old who obviously has poisoned the well in LA and has been on what is it now, 6 teams in the last 6 years, 5 teams in the last 6 years. It it just doesn't make sense to me. I know we always talk about the relationships with Leon Rose and this being one of his guys.
Mhm.
Um, and there's always these, reuniting these guys. I just don't see how it fits here now. He's just, this is Jalen Brunson's team. They don't need a Chris Paul to disrupt that.
What do you see like deadline wise? Obviously, we're still 2 months away, 2+ months away. What are you seeing? What are you hearing deadline wise in terms of New York or elsewhere?
I mean, it's so. We've talked about this since the summer. What the Knicks have kind of done, pinned themselves in right up against the second apron. I think when you look at guys, you start looking at contracts. What could you move? The one thing I've been saying for years that we've seen with this front office is they don't like to lose a free agent for nothing. If they think they're not going to sign somebody, they'll make a move. That always makes me curious about Mitchell Robinson, who they've sort of wrapped in bubble wrap this year. Um, Deuce McBride, the same thing. He's obviously worth more than they paid him, and his next contract is going to reflect that. These are decisions they're going to have to make in the future. So those are guys I keep an eye on as possible trade pieces. If you could upgrade that position. But I think really to me right now, I think they're open to riding this out. What you said earlier, I've heard the same thing. That they're kind of happy with this roster, um, and I think they can piece it together. We talk about backup point guard. They have guys who they think could fill that role. Josh Hart plays minutes running the offense. Obviously, Brunson plays 35 minutes a night. McBride can do it in a pinch. Bridges can handle the ball and kind of orchestrate the offense. it's not, to me, it's not the need that I always go back to this. We're talking about backup point guard for 10 minutes a game. These are
Yep.
good problems to have. And I think unless something knocks on their door, I don't think that they're going to rush and make a bad deal.
Yeah, and I mean the playoffs. Jalen Brunson's playing 40 plus minutes, so
Absolutely.
whoever you're getting is going to get probably decreased time in the postseason. So
I'll circle back around from F. Reed, not including Giannis. Are you aware of any players that are looking to be added to the team after December 15th? The Knicks need a big wing IMO. I think a lot of NBA teams would like a big wing on their team. But I know we talked about it for you guys as the Knicks evaluate their roster. I know we also got a question from Vic. Let's forget about Giannis. What position do we need more, a backup center or a backup point guard? So to talk about the big man too, just in terms of what the Knicks might need to add, Steve, why don't I start with you on this one? What do you think?
I think, first of all, I'll say this. I've heard the same thing as Ian's heard, that they're pretty happy with the roster and want to see how this builds out. Every year for them seems like there's been a lot of change, whether it's, the trades, the deals last year for Bridges and for Towns, and this year the coaching change and some of the guys they brought in. I think they think that they have enough. So we sit here and say, they want this backup center, this backup point guard. I don't know that it's as desperate as anybody seems to be presenting it. I think that there's a belief in the room that they have enough to contend. Do they have enough to be Oklahoma City? I always kind of say that you put yourself in the mix to be a contender, and then you roll the dice because, there can be injuries, somebody else. We look at Oklahoma City as unbeatable. Are they one hamstring away from not being, to me, it's, and look at what Indiana did to them last year and the threat they were to them. Nobody's unbeatable in this league. We're all sort of like one calf muscle, one hamstring away from, opening the door for other teams.
Ian, what do you think about the roster?
yeah, I think, excuse me, I look at the backup point guard spot only because of the Malcolm Brogdon signing before the season, the idea that he was going to have that spot, and then obviously it didn't pan out, but it tells you that at the very least they were looking for somebody to fill that spot. So that's where I go at this point. Again, super early. The Tulo Tech mentioned at Tulo Tech, that's my guy. I appreciate the question. He mentioned the wing position, I think, and I don't think the Knicks can really lend anyone of consequence there. But I'll go back to Dallas. I mean, Najee Marshall, I don't know where they are with him, but if they decide to, trade off the Gafford types and the Marshall types, Najee Marshall is going to get a lot of interest around the league because of the way that has played in Dallas and what he's done throughout the course of his career. So that's a wing that I would keep an eye on, at least for as a realistic target for teams out there.